Let's talk about something that just doesn't make any sense. We live in an age of incredible technology where we can grow more food than ever before. And yet, the global hunger crisis isn't getting better. In a lot of places, it's actually getting worse. So, why? Let's dig in. I mean, just look at that number. 673 million people. That's more than 8% of everyone on the planet. It's such a massive number, it's hard to even wrap your head around. It leads to the most important question we have to ask. In a world that literally produces more than enough food to feed every single person, why are we failing this badly?
So what's the answer? Well, right off the bat, we have to be clear. The problem isn't a lack of food. It's not a scarcity issue. The problem is a massive, complicated, human-made failure of our systems. Experts have a name for this. They call it a wicked problem, and that's the perfect description. It's this tangled web of money, politics, and broken structures that keeps food away from the people who desperately need it.
To really start to untangle that web, we have to begin in a pretty grim place, the battlefield. Because in just the last few years, something has shifted. Armed conflict has now officially overtaken climate change as the single biggest driver of severe hunger around the world.
Just think about that for a second. For 140 million people, being hungry isn't a random accident of nature. It's a direct result of war. And we have to be really clear here, this isn't just unfortunate collateral damage. More and more often, it's a deliberate, calculated strategy of war.
And this isn't just theoretical. This is happening right now. In Gaza, you see the almost complete destruction of all cropland combined with blockades on aid, which has created a massive food crisis. And over in Sudan, the deliberate targeting of bakeries and water wells is a textbook case of using starvation as a weapon, leading to the first officially declared famine in years.
Okay, so the problem goes way beyond the battlefield. It extends right into the global marketplace. See, even if you're lucky enough to not be caught in a conflict, there are these huge economic forces at play that are trapping millions of people in a cycle of hunger.
We've all been feeling the pinch from inflation lately, right? But this chart shows the hidden story. Food prices didn't just rise, they skyrocketed, way faster than everything else. Now look at that last bar. In low-income countries, food inflation hit a devastating 30%. Now imagine if food is more than half of your family's budget. A price jump like that isn't just tough, it's impossible.
And here's the really frustrating part. Even as global food prices have started to cool off, a lot of countries aren't feeling any of that relief. Why not? Well, it's because of this economic concept called import price pass-through. Put simply, because things like wheat and corn are all traded in US dollars, if your local currency gets weaker, the cost for you to import that food goes through the roof, even if the global price tag is falling.
So you've got conflict and these crazy economics. But honestly, they're both symptoms of an even deeper sickness in the system. The very design of our global food system has some fundamental flaws. It's built to prioritize profit over people, and that leads to wild price swings and an incredible amount of waste. I mean, just look at this. It's staggering. A very, very small group of massive corporations, nicknamed the ABCD Plus Group, controls 80% of the entire global grain trade. 80%! That's an almost unimaginable amount of power over the world's most basic food supply. And when you have that much power concentrated in so few hands, something really dangerous happens. The main goal shifts. For these giant companies, it's not really about moving food from a farm to your table anymore. As you can see here, the huge majority of their income now comes from financial derivatives. So think of it less like they're selling bread and more like they're betting on the future price of wheat. Their profits get bigger when prices are volatile and unpredictable, which is the exact opposite of what you need for a stable food supply. And on top of all of that, we have this absolutely tragic paradox of waste. Globally, about a third of all the food we produce is just lost. In developing nations, most of that loss happens right after the harvest because of simple things like not having proper storage or refrigerated trucks. But in developed nations, the waste happens at the other end. It's food that gets rejected by supermarkets because it doesn't look perfect, or food that we just throw out from our own refrigerators.
All these massive systemic failures, the conflict, the economics, the waste, they all boil down to a devastating, deeply personal human cost. And maybe none is more damaging or more permanent than the effect that malnutrition has on children.
So you hear this term stunting. What does it actually mean? Well, it's not just about a child being small for their age. It's about what happens when a child doesn't get enough nutrition in that critical window, their first 1,000 days. It causes permanent, irreversible damage to their physical and cognitive development. And that word irreversible is the key. It's damage that can never be fixed. And this is how it creates what economists call a poverty trap. It becomes a vicious cycle that's almost impossible to escape. A stunted child is far more likely to struggle in school. That leads to lower-skilled jobs and lower wages as an adult. And that means they can't afford to provide the right nutrition for their own kids, and so the cycle just repeats, locking in poverty for another generation. And this isn't just an individual tragedy, it is a full-blown national economic disaster. On average, a country loses 7% of its per capita income potential because of the long-term effects of stunting. And in some parts of Africa and South Asia, that number climbs to a shocking 10%. It's like an anchor holding back development year after year. So after looking at all these deep, interconnected problems, it becomes pretty obvious that small Band-Aid fixes are not going to cut it. A systemic crisis requires a systemic solution. We actually have to rewrite the rules of the entire game. And here's what that new rulebook could look like. Experts are proposing a strategy that attacks the problem on 5 fronts at once. You have to align economic policies to shield the poor from price shocks. You have to regulate the markets to stop all that wild speculation. You have to enforce international law to stop the use of hunger as a weapon. You have to invest in basic infrastructure to stop waste. And finally, and this one is crucial, you have to tackle deep-seated inequality, especially for women.
Let's just park on that last point for a moment, because the impact here is absolutely massive. Women do most of the agricultural work in the world, yet they're systematically denied the same access to land, to credit, to basic resources. And get this, the data shows that if we simply close that gender gap, we could boost farm yields by up to 30% and cut the number of hungry people in the world by as much as 17%, just by creating a level playing field.
You know, in the end, this quote really says it all. The reason we failed to end world hunger isn't because we can't produce enough food. We can. It's a failure of will. It's a failure to take action and actually fix the broken structural, financial, and geopolitical systems we ourselves created. And that brings us to one final big question that we all have to think about. The system we have now, it treats food like just another commodity, like oil or gold, to be traded for maximum profit. So maybe it's time to completely rethink that. Maybe it's time for a new social contract for food, one where we finally start treating access to food not as a market privilege, but as a fundamental human right.